Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week from a beautiful small town in Colombia. As you can see behind me, nice and rustic. Today we have this week I should say, the largest bank in Australia limiting withdrawals to just $600 and change. We have the Rhine River in Germany going down again, giving trouble to do the cargo ships. And also we have another big piece of news. Oh, Virgin Galactic. If you want to go to space, it'll just cost you $450,000. Let's get started. Not a whole lot of news when it comes to the economy or what the central bank is doing, except of a lot of chatter, let's say. We did have some inflation reports that came out of Europe that were pretty good, meaning that overall around the world, the inflation rates are supposedly going down. I say supposedly because I know that when you go to the grocery store, you probably don't see inflation going down. Your cost to buy food is probably still going up. I remember I tell the story frequently. I stopped for a while because I was repeating it too much, but I went to Five Guys, which was a burger joint in the United States that I love. During the pandemic in 2020, I paid $20 for two people, 2 fries, 2 burgers, 2 drinks, and now it's $20 just for me. So let's not believe that the inflation rate is actually 5% like they say it is. So the Wednesday, the Fed chair, which is someone that works for the Central Bank of the United States, which maintains the fiscal policy, meaning the interest rates, they said that more restrictive monetary policy is still to come, meaning that they're probably going to continue to increase the interest rates, which isn't good because the interest rates, since the economy is so financialized right now, any small change, whether up or down, significantly affects the economy. And obviously going up is a bad thing because things get more expensive. It's more expensive to buy cars, to buy houses, to pay your credit card bill because it's a variable interest rate. So if they continue to increase the interest rates, it's not good for any of us because obviously the economy stops moving as much because 70% of the economy in the United States is consumer spending. So you and I spending money is literally what almost 70%, 70 of the economy in the United States is. Other than that, most of the stock markets around the world were mostly positive. In the U.S., the NASDAQ has had in the first quarter the best start to the year ever. This has been spearheaded by the NVIDIA chips, the new artificial intelligence boom, which NVIDIA kind of dominates right now with the chips. Canada was also higher at 3.79%. Market and overseas market news, the European markets were mostly higher at over 3%, for Italy being the most positive of all. Latin America was mostly higher, Africa and the Middle East as well, and then Asia and the far East mostly higher as well, with the Indian Sensex going up higher than all of them. Bitcoin and crypto, the biggest bank in Australia is limiting withdrawals to 600, and there's a mosquito that's going to bite me.
Perfect KO.
So there's a biggest bank in Australia that's going to limit withdrawals to $667. I find that really weird. Why didn't they just put 666 instead of 667? Think of that what you will. The World Economic Forum in Davos, in the summer Davos in China, they admitted that the CBDCs, which is the central bank digital currencies, which I always talk to you guys about, what I always thought was kind of the end game of crypto and blockchain, that they're going to be able to restrict undesirable purchases and set expiration dates, meaning you bought too much meat this week? Oh, you can't buy meat anymore this week. Or you can't travel for the next 2 years because you've eaten your yearly allowance of carbon. And one of the things that was really interesting as well is that it actually is more carbon intensive. They revealed a study that it's more carbon intensive to actually grow plants like soy and, whatever is in these vegan stuff, drinks, than it is to actually raise cows. Because cows actually regenerate the earth because the manure from the cows is actually fertilizer for the land, which I thought something was really interesting. And if you guys remember, I believe it was last week or the week before, I talked to you guys about how EVs, according to a report that was made by Volvo, EVs actually pollute the environment. I believe it was 70% more than gasoline cars. So make that what you will. Central Bank of Korea is also testing CBDCs. Seems like everybody is doing it now. It'll probably be launched. What'll probably happen, and this conspiracy Marcello talking, There'll probably be some kind of attack, right? Like a cybersecurity attack, and then we'll probably be in the dark, I don't know, for however long. And then when we come back online with electricity and everything, that's when they'll have the new system rolled out. And now with AI, basically everything will be run on AI. They won't even have a person actually running the system. It'll just be, well, you have your carbon credits, you got to use your digital money, and if you buy too much meat, you got to go sit in a corner and not do anything for a few weeks. Bitcoin this week down 0.98%, just over 30,400. So we had a little bit of a spurt to the upside. Now it's kind of getting range bound again. In commodities, the Rhine River in Germany, it has stopped allowing full cargo ships, or the cargo ships being full, due to the fact that the water levels have gone down due to the lower rainfall. If you guys remember, during the pandemic in 2020, the water levels of the Rhine River got so low that you could see the last time that there was a huge drought, which was, I believe, in the 1500s or the 1600s. And it actually said in German on the rocks, be afraid, be careful during this time, because the last time that it happened, a lot of people died. The oil market struggled to shake off fears of the higher interest rates, but both the United States oil and Brent, which is the international, both went up. The U.S. went up over 2% to 70.64, whereas Brent went up 1.42% to almost $75. And now the other crop that's starting to surge in price because of the climate is cacao, which is what chocolate is made out of. It's at its highest level in 46 years. So remember the last few weeks we talked about the wheat, we talked about the corn, we talked about the peaches in Georgia, the strawberries, the orange juice, right? So it kind of seems like this is just continuing to escalate little by little, and that's probably why they're making all these GMO crops, because they need it to kind of, have less water and all these other things. That's just my conspiracy theory thinking here. Gold went down 0.02% to 1920. Silver went down 1.46% to 2286. Financial and banking news, the great country of Turkey, their currency, which is the lira, dropped to a record low against the dollar. And the Eurozone inflation fell by more than expected at 5.5%, lowest point since January in 2022. It is a good thing that the inflation has been going down around the world, because that means that most central governments are going to be less inclined to increase the interest rates. And remember, we don't want that to happen, because that makes everything for us more expensive. Political news in the backwards Communist Republic of New York. They are now starting to crack down on coal and wood-fired pizzas to try to cut the carbon emissions by 75%. Of all the things they could have done, now they're going after the pizza. You know that this is the end for New York, because what else do they have other than pizza, right? And if you're from New York, I love you. There was a study done by, I believe it was Reuters. They wanted to find out the people that are in the government right now, how many are alive from slave descendants, meaning people who own slaves. The current live presidents, the only one that wasn't a descendant of slave owners was Donald Trump. And even Barack Obama was actually a descendant of slave owners as well, which was really surprising. Supreme Court struck down the race-conscious student admissions program at Harvard and University of North Carolina, meaning that they can't base the acceptance to people in the school based on race. This is going to have, in my opinion, much bigger arching effects, because they have affirmative action, which is basically hiring based on race at companies as well. So if it's not allowed in the universities, it's most likely not going to be allowed in private enterprises either. So now companies and even schools are going to have to hire or accept people based on merit rather than race. It's kind of like saying that because there's not enough white people in the NBA, that they should just have a percentage of more white people all the time, instead of allowing the best players to play in the game. It's kind of how I translate it. Supreme Court on Friday also blocked Biden's student debt relief plan and a 6-3 decision, halting over 40 million borrowers, which was a campaign promise of Biden, which a lot of people were saying he would never have been able to pass anyway. In economic news, new home sales surged over 12% last month, seasonally adjusted, just over 763,000 homes. So you can see that we have some news that's really good for the economy, and then some news that isn't as good, but there's more good news than bad news, which again implies that the interest rates in the United States and the central bank in the U.S. is most likely going to increase the rates again. China industrials firms had a double-digit decline in the first 5 months of the year. They had 18% drop in profits, so even there's some warning signs coming out of the second largest economy in the world in China. And the number of Americans with new claims of unemployment benefits fell last week by the most in 20 months. So again, more kind of flashing red signs, but unfortunately, since there's more good news than bad news, the central bank will probably still look to increase the rates. Corporate news, rich people are starting to feel the pinch as well. The index that tracks the Rolex and Patek Philippe watches went down it's a 2-year low basically now. So there's an index called the Subdial Index, which tracks the prices of Rolex sales and the fancy watches like the Pateks. And it's started to go down now by quite a bit. It's been going down for a while. So if you ever wanted to buy a Rolex, now might be the time. Generac shares is almost up 23% after it affects over 40 million Americans in a heat wave from Arizona to Florida. Texas got the brunt of the heat wave, triple-digit temperatures in Celsius for you guys in Europe. That's about 45, 47 degrees. In Mexico, the heat wave killed at least 100 people. And the U.S. Commerce Department reported corporate profits dropped for the third straight quarter. So the S&P profits decreased 1.2% instead of the previous drop of 2.1%. And Apple hit another intraday record high again. They're now the first $3 trillion company in history. And large U.S. corporation bankruptcies begun to speed up again to levels haven't seen during the pandemic in 2020. So notice that, the unemployment claims went down, but notice that we have a lot more news that's quote-unquote good rather than bad, right? The technology, France, they're getting their military under order again, conducting a maiden test of a list of prototype of hypersonic gliders, which would beat a lot of the most state-of-the-art defense systems that we have around the world now. Virgin Galactic is going to send their first commercial space flights on Thursday. They have a backlog of about 800 passengers. Originally, they were selling tickets of about $200,000 to $250,000. They stopped selling tickets for a while, and now it's $450,000 because, inflation. Investment news. On Tuesday, U.S. consumers' confidence increased to its highest level in 1.5 years. Again, remember, the consumer spending in the United States is almost 70% of the economy. So consumer confidence is a good thing because if it goes up, more people are going to want to spend money, and that moves the economy quite a bit. International news, I don't know if you guys seen, probably not because they're not sharing it in the news, but it looks like an absolute war zone in France right now. There's cars being lit on fire, office buildings, all kinds of stuff. They're sending in the military and police to be able to go ahead and put down the protesters. But there was an African-American teenager that was killed by the police, so that kind of exploded the riots there in France. Interesting facts, Italian authorities are looking for a tourist, which they did find, that put graffiti in the Colosseum. What is wrong with people? But speaking of the Colosseum, a very good thing, bread and circus anyway. The fight between Zuckerberg and Elon Musk might actually happen at the Colosseum, said Elon Musk on Twitter. So that would be kind of cool. So remember, when people start getting a little rambunctious, as the Roman emperors used to say, give them bread and circuses. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right.